Hi guys. Today I had the absolute pleasure sitting down with a dear friend of mine, Mr. Henry Chan, who's a very senior investment practitioner in Hong Kong, looking after multi-asset class and equity strategies. Henry shares his storied career going from his time being on the Hong Kong national table tennis squad, which was absolutely amazing, to getting a merit-based scholarship that led to his journey with London School of Economics in the UK. Coming back to Hong Kong, he explains how he built his tenured career looking after managing teams and dealing with a diverse range of clients, what that rapport building looked like, and how he dealt with adversity. We really had a great chat, and I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. Cheers. Henry, welcome to the podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. I'm glad that you've made time for me on your trip to Singapore. How's it been so far?
Oh, brilliant. Catch up with a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends here, and this time round I caught up with a friend. I haven't seen him for 30 years.
From your school days?
Yeah, from university.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, for my audience members, they might not know, but we've been friends for many years. You're based in Hong Kong. Can you be kind enough just to give us a short overview of what your career has been like and what you're currently doing, please?
Sure. I've been in fund management for over 20 years, very much in equities, but in more recent years, I'm doing asset allocation and multi-assets. And currently, I'm doing more as a consultant on private equity.
Beautiful. Well, we'll come to that part of the journey later on. Tell me about how you first moved from Hong Kong to the UK, because I think that's a really interesting part of your journey. How old were you?
Well, I was about 18 years old when I went to the UK. And I studied in London. It was on a scholarship sponsored by the Hong Kong government.
Beautiful. How did you find? I'm always curious. Like, did you apply, or your teacher told you about it? How did you find out?
Well, actually, I found out from school, and it was actually the second year of that scholarship. So I knew someone who got in the first year. So at that time, I thought, for family, they could have helped me on my study, but I thought it would be a lot of sacrifice from the family.
Sure.
So I applied to that. Actually, I applied to the UK and the scholarship without my parents knowing anything.
Oh, really?
So it was a lot of nervous time. So you need to get the offer from the university. You went through interviews with the scholarship committee. And it's not until I got both.
Which did you get first, or they were almost parallel?
Almost parallel. I guess the university offer came first.
So London School of Economics, by the way, fantastic university.
Yeah.
Were you very excited?
Was very excited, about the university, but also about going to the UK.
Okay.
So the real excitement came, the letter came through.
Yeah.
And I was very nervous. I remember we have a little cat at home, and I was so excited the cat disappeared for 2 days.
Why were you running around?
Yeah, I was jumping up and down.
Amazing.
And funny enough, I wanted to tell the cat too, but it took me 2 days to find her. and so I turned around to my parents and say, look, it's always been my wish to study abroad.
Beautiful.
And in the UK, but now I'm telling you, I got a place, I got the money too. And it paid me all the tuition fees, but also a living expense too.
Amazing.
So I don't need to pay much.
Your parents must have been so happy and proud of you. Was there a bond? Do you have to stay on for?
Just return to Hong Kong for 3 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Doesn't have to be working with the government. You just have to work somewhere and just complete the obligation.
It's interesting because I always find it curious when someone gets a scholarship, because I always think there's a lot of meaning behind it, right? And if you're given one, it means that you're being singled out as someone that has high potential, and whoever's given you the scholarship believes in you. But I remember when my wife I didn't even know she applied for a Fulbright scholarship, and we were in Japan on holiday, and she said, they want to do an interview. And I said, you've got to go back to Singapore for the interview. And she said, but we'll cut our holiday short. And I said, baby, that's so important. It's so prestigious. But when she did a PhD, she had a 5-year bond, which she's still serving. And I wanted to see it through because it's close to $500,000.
Yeah. Well, luckily at that time, the scholarship, they granted not purely on the academics. My academics were not bad.
Yeah.
It's just that they count a lot on how I talk to them during the interview, the things I share.
Beautiful.
It just happened that I got involved in so many different things in school.
Yeah.
So they thought, apart from my academic, which probably already make the cut before they got me in to talk to me.
Well, I know that you used to play table tennis at a very high level in Hong Kong. Do you think that might have helped you?
Yes. Well, it's very interesting. So one of the questions that came through was that, Henry, you got involved in so many things, from drama, debating, sports, and all sorts of things. So what is the one big thing you thought that changed your life? And I said, actually, at that point, I already retired from competitive table tennis. I stopped training with the national squad by then. And I said, it's still table tennis. It gave me confidence.
Yeah.
And also, I said, going into exams, I have 3 hours to decide what I needed to do, what I needed to write. In table tennis, you have 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And the ball keeps sort of bouncing on and off.
Yeah.
So I never felt under pressure going into an exam situation or talking to people, because in table tennis, you're forced to be under pressure all the time. So yeah, that helped. And this is a exact story I share with the community. Maybe because based on that, I mean, they sort of made me through.
Well, maybe they had an avid table tennis player in the group, you know. It's, for people that don't play it or haven't played it much, it's such a technically skillful game, right? Where you know, the spin on the ball, unless you know what you're looking for, you won't even see it coming your way. It's a beautiful, and the great thing about that game is you can play at home. You don't need a lot of space. You don't even need a fancy table, you know. So I love the game. I love it.
Yeah, I think also for what I learned from the sport is that you want to be very prepared all the time. You plan your game. You check out what your opponent is going to look like.
When you say plan the game, just share with us.
Well, you plan a strategy.
Okay.
Sometimes you have something in mind, what I'm going to do. You check out, I mean, we know each other, a lot of the opponent. And so what is he going to do? What is going to be his strategy?
Yes.
But very often, it's a completely different story. You got in, and then somehow you might not in the best form on the day. So you planned the game, but you couldn't execute. I mean, the touch never came through. So you have to adjust.
Yeah.
You adjust every single point. And you have to say, hang on a second, today is not my day. I have to play a different game. Or this guy played differently. Or it was actually a bad day on the other side.
Yes.
And so I don't want to have to take that risk. I mean, I just let him sort of score an own goal.
Yeah.
And so reflecting on that, I apply a lot on investing. You have your outlook, you do your homework, you go in and say, oh no, things change so much. And I found out providing the right response is sometimes more important than making the right forecast.
Yeah.
So you have to be very prepared. You have a lot of things in your bag, but it's about when you're pulling out what, and that's probably more important.
I'll tell you a funny story. You know, I'm a massive fan of combat sports and the UFC in particular. Yeah. And Dana White, who's the president, one of the owners of the UFC, he explained that the initial owners, who were 2 brothers, who were very competitive, they're multi-billionaires, they had in their contract, if they couldn't find a solution, that they would have a jiu-jitsu match. And whoever won the jiu-jitsu match got to overturn the other person in that particular debate. So you could have that with a game of table tennis, probably a little bit healthier and safer. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
So London School of Economics, what did you study?
I studied accounting and finance.
Okay.
But actually that extends to a broad range of subjects. And I did psychology as an elective. I remember when I graduated, the 2 professors remembered me. One was my tutor, and the one actually was the professor in psychology.
Wow.
So I thought, yes, finance is a very broad area, but that shouldn't prevent me from looking at many different other things.
Well, think about this. Think about how many investors would be even better investors if they study human psychology and how we react to things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I had this conversation the other day, and it's very difficult to really calculate it, but I'm sure more people have lost more money as a result of reacting to the idea of what's happening in the market vis-a-vis what's actually happening. So I think more people have lost money through that sentiment than even recessions collectively. You know, that is crazy. So LSE, after that, did you come straight back to Hong Kong?
Yeah, that was 1992.
Okay.
Things were quite challenging in the UK when it comes to the economy. And 1997 was coming. And a lot of people told me that there will be opportunities opening up and you wanted to be around 97 rather than you spend some time abroad and decide to come back afterwards.
Yeah.
So it's both a push and pull. And so I started off with an accountancy firm as an auditor.
Anderson.
Arthur Anderson.
Was you know, the number one consultancy to get back into. Was it very difficult to do so?
Well, the good thing is that they were more open to candidates coming from overseas universities.
Yeah.
Back then, a lot of the Hong Kong accounting firms, they would prefer more the local graduates.
Yes.
So, and actually after a little more than a year in audit, they made a little transfer probably to do a bit more of the consulting work. The consulting work involved more the private equity funds putting money in China. So I've been traveling all around China to all the remote areas.
Pretty much since day one of your career almost, right?
Yeah, actually, it's funny that I got back a bit into private equity now, because when I tried to find a job, I was trying to find a private equity job, which there were not a lot for less experienced candidates. So I ended up moving into fund management more in the listed space.
Yeah.
Which it worked both ways. Listed space, probably the company went through all the due diligence and made it to the market. Private equity during my time, I got to see more the dark side of things.
Yeah.
And so you look at that, you have a perspective of looking from inside out, drawing on my, I would say relatively limited experience with the time back then. But it was an interesting journey.
So after Anderson, you were there 2 years, right?
I was there for 3 years.
Oh, 3 years, okay.
And I became a Greater China analyst at GT Management. So they changed the name to LGT, and Invesco took over the team a few years later. So I stayed on as a whole for 9 years. That was my first job.
Amazing.
In the management industry.
Amazing. Now, I find a lot of people on the fund management side, you end up maybe specializing in different things, right? Did you see yourself as a specialist within that space or a real generalist?
I'm more a generalist now.
Yeah.
But I actually started off more as a specialist. And I think the interesting part, when I found out throughout my life or career, I believe there are a lot of smart people around. When I play sports, there will be a really good player who wanted to play striker. I was not. So in my school days, in order to get into the football team, so I went in, I realized there was no backup goalkeeper. So I said I wanted to be the backup goalkeeper because actually I was quite bad in goalkeeping. But there were only 2 people who actually went for the goalkeeping role. So they took both, so I got into the team.
Brilliant.
And 2 months later, both strikers were injured. So I started off the first game as a striker. and so I joining my first job in the industry. At that time, I think nobody wanted to do Taiwan. It was a very small market. The tech sector was not developed as yet. It was 1996. A lot of people didn't realize at that time, tech sector was not the biggest sector in Taiwan. And it was not in the index. It was not in the MSCI. And so I took it on because nobody wanted to do it. I learned the tech sector. And 2 years later, there were like hundreds of tech companies got listed. The market opened up a bit. The MSCI put it in 20% weighting.
Yeah.
So suddenly I got fast tracked into handling one of the biggest markets. And I did it well. The fund won a prize. So I got fast-tracked into, at that time, what you call the holy grail of being in an Asian team that I managed like regional money, and including Japan. So I don't know, I mean, sometimes everybody has a different journey, but my journey is about, I'm happy to fill gaps. I'm happy to go into areas where people wouldn't want to do, but I thought someone has to do it.
Yeah.
Can be me. And just wait for the opportunity to come. I know people who like to spot whatever the bright spots are and jump to, and some people are very good at that. I consider myself more an average person. So I try to do it slowly, safely.
Yes.
And I believe if you do your job well, people will appreciate.
I think it's interesting you say that, because we'll talk about football, and I love football, and some of the best players, like, not that I was a Manchester United fan, but I always think of Dennis Irwin, you know, in the back row, very quiet, very unassuming, but never missed a game, and was always called upon, right? He was always in the starting 11, and I'm not relating you to Dennis Irwin, but he was someone that you need to have him there, and he will do the graft work that no one else wants to do.
Yeah, it's actually, I like to read how sports manager manage the teams.
Yeah.
When I got the chance to run teams in my job, I thought managing a group of analysts and fund managers is quite similar to managing a football team. You have people playing different positions, all with very big egos. and when you find out, I would say, I want to build an all-star team.
Yeah.
But then I thought, number one, you don't have an all-star budget all the time. But seriously, even if you have the budget, then you need people who can do different things and play different roles. And I can see, I want to hire someone like myself, who maybe not very assuming, but is willing to, you mentioned about like Dennis Irwin, well, he is a great player.
Yeah.
He's actually more than that in my view. But there are other players, what you call the squad players.
Yes.
I had squad players in my team. Everybody, when there's a gap, this person will always want to come in. And this kind of person is very loyal, because he knows or she knows the value comes from being within the team rather than going elsewhere. So you need a mix. And yeah, I like sports. I like following sports, and I learn a lot from how you manage sports team in terms of managing my own teams.
You know, I love the way that you put all that together, because sometimes, not often, but you know, in the last 29 years, I've been very fortunate to assemble a few teams, and it's never done in one go. It's progressively over a number of years. But sometimes now, so, you know, when I look at the alumni of certain organizations now, after 10, 15 years, maybe some people leave, but these guys will often meet together and go out for dinner. It does upset me, by the way, that they don't always invite me. They forget who helped put them all together in the first place. But when you look at it, you can literally look at the formation of that squad, exactly as you said. And I think that's very powerful. Who are some of the sporting leaders and business leaders that you admire, and for various reasons?
I wouldn't say I totally admire them.
Okay.
But there were actually things that I could copy.
Yes.
So as an entrepreneur, I look at Richard Branson.
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of people like him. What I look at it is that, well, I'm not as entrepreneurial, but I like to initiate things.
Yes.
And from him, what I learned from him is that you always want to bring in someone who can actually help him execute.
Yeah.
So when I'm running the team, I always say, okay, these are the initiations. I think we can do well here. I can do well here. But I'm not the best person to actually put through every day. I don't like routines. But I know I need someone who is good at routines, who can actually help me. And also, sports, I believe, you build structures for the long term.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm glad that in some of the former teams, some of the people who work with me, they went on to become, my successors and leaders in the team even now after more than 15 years. And I thought, I might not stay forever in a team, but I always believe that for a team to be successful, you always have to think quite long term in terms of how you want to achieve. You build a structure. In between, you have short-term hurdles to manage. But this is what I kind of learned from a lot of the more successful managers.
Yeah, I remember reading all of Branson's books early on, and the way he kind of writes the books, you kind of visualize yourself there. And one thing that I learned in business as an entrepreneur myself is there are levels. I will never be phenomenally wealthy because I think you have to have big balls, very courageous to double down. And there are two stories I remember about Richard Branson that really struck home. I just thought this guy's brilliant. So he was in a taxi, and the taxi driver was Phil Collins. And Phil was a young recording artist, and Richard Branson told him who he was, and he said, "Look, I've recorded a demo. It's on my cassette tape. Can you have a listen?" He goes, "Sure, play it in." He goes, "Oh, I've left it at home." So Phil Collins lived in a council flat, brought Richard Branson back to the council flat whilst his mum made him breakfast, put the demo in, and then that was the start of Phil Collins.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, amazing story. And the other one that really, really showed you how much fight Richard Branson had was he was trying to sign Janet Jackson, who at the time, Michael Jackson's sister, was the biggest recording artist in the world. And he basically had no money. So he had to go and borrow money and raise funds in a very short period, like a 12-hour period, to say, here's the contract. And she signed, but he actually didn't have a penny at the time. So that's what you call all in. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Talk a little bit about Bearings when, as the head of the investment business running APAC. Talk to us a little bit about that part of your journey.
Yeah, it was a big challenge. In fact, I joined the company more as the number 2 or number 3 as a regional manager. And actually, I put through, you can say, I won't say a completely new process, but an enhancement to the current process and adding a bit of my own way of thinking. And actually, the products turned out to perform quite well.
If you don't mind me asking, I'm very curious, when you start that, recreating the process, what do you do? Do you literally look at what the organization already has and then have a clean sheet of paper saying, look, let me enhance it in these ways, or is it very organic?
When I got interviewed, the CIO in London asked me, we got fantastic country funds, and they're all at the top of the table. But our regional fund, the Asian regional fund, when we put all the countries together, it didn't work. So what do you think? And I said, well, in that case, do you manage all these funds based on the same process? Not exactly. The country funds will be a man and a dog, and they will try to go out and hunt for ideas. And all these people will get together and provide a model. And you put together, and then you become Asia. I said the easy solution is that you create a country called Asia. Of course, I'm putting myself forward. So I'm the man who run an Asia country. And you have proven your process for the country funds worked. So why don't you implement that in the regional fund? So I went in, and the team actually, or the Asian team, talked more. I had to talk to the different people a lot more because I'm not relying on a model. I have to pick my stocks. I have to understand. And then we actually work together and we talk more. I think what I learned throughout those years, I worked with the team in Hong Kong. I worked with the global team in London. I worked with emerging market team in London. And what I found out is that you have all these structures to force you to provide input. You force you to talk to people. And what I realized is that after a few years, there were a few changes, and the Asian team no longer reported to these two teams, the global teams.
Mm-hmm.
And as it turned out, I spent a lot of time trying to engage with my counterparts there. We end up talking more, and I always tell my team members, I want to push you guys to talk to each other because you want to, not because you have to.
Yeah.
And that applies to all my career.
That's brilliant.
When I'm working in the team as an individual, or I got in a position to lead a team, people never like the idea you force them to do things.
Agreed.
But they have to see the value of talking to each other. And even when I was managing the broker relationship, always say my best sell side contact is someone that I'm willing to pick up the phone and ask him a very stupid question.
Yeah.
And these will be my best contact because these are working partners.
Yeah. It's so brilliant you say that, because I'm just curious. So were your counterparts in different countries when you said you reached out to them?
Yeah, I mean, it's in quite a number of different areas.
Because what I find, obviously now with a little bit of traveling, now with virtual calls, but back in the day, you would have a counterpart who's effectively, many ways, your doppelganger or friend. It depends what you're doing. But what I always say, those guys, they live the same dream as you. They're getting up, they're doing the same thing. And I always say this, a rising tide raises all ships. So if you interact and they do well, you do well, and I don't know about you, but I've always maintained those friendships because you're on that journey together. You're fighting the good fight together.
Yeah, I think the belief is that you want to work with people. You don't want to work in a structure.
Yeah.
So, of course, I mean, we all have structures. We need that. But that's why I like to travel to actually meet them.
Yeah.
You can never replace a good handshake and then go out for a drink.
Yeah.
And I guess it's more about understanding each other. When I talk to my own team members, when I talk to them, we somehow figure out what will be your strengths and weaknesses. And they will come to me and I'll be very honest. I say, I have no conviction on this. I can give you a view.
Yes.
But I don't have high conviction in the view. And so working with people in some way is like a portfolio management.
Yes.
You allocate to where there is conviction. So I know a certain contacts or team members, a certain sector when it flies, this is the guy you have to go to and ask for ideas.
Yeah.
But other times, they can give you an opinion on other things, but and then we are all on a very a basis that we trust each other and we are honest to each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's what teams are all about.
100%. I think that transparency is just so important. Now, as a portfolio manager, what I've learned is that it depends on the profile of the person. So if you look in, for example, a lot of teams, in particular discretionary portfolio management teams or the CIO office, there are those guys that love to be behind a desk, right, managing the investments from afar. And there are those guys that actually want to go out, meet all the clients, right? Which one are you?
I'm probably more a generalist. I like investment.
Yeah.
But actually I like to, maybe it's my character. I mentioned that I like to fill the gaps.
Yes.
And I don't like the idea that there's something left there and nobody sort of take care of. So I guess I'm more someone who do investment, but also I engage with clients.
Yeah.
I engage with team members. Maybe I had a bit of a beginner's luck. I remember it's back in year 2000. So I just took over quite a large size of assets on regional assets, including Japan. And I was asked to actually go to pitch and mandate. And in Australia, I had about 4 to 5 years of experience in the industry. So I was very nervous. And it's happened that we had a restructuring in the office in Australia. We just fired the managing director. So we went in, the first update was that, sorry, the guy you knew was not with the company anymore. So we bring in Henry to talk about the mandate. And we won it. So I thought there were different reasons why we actually did the results. The performance was good. And I thought, actually, I can do different things. And I can engage with clients. Sometimes it's always very nervous when you think about I am an institutional investor. I dealt with big company, big clients. But then over the last 20-something years, I realized many of the relationships become very personal.
Oh, yeah.
And it's on the same basis of a personal trust that you go out to talk to people. So I enjoy that. I enjoy the process. I not only because I feel that when I talk to clients, I can add value by getting them prepared, not just to give us the money, just to run it and deliver the performance. They will have an input, and I will be able to understand what sort of a risk profile, what sort of things they are looking for.
I think that's so important. It's interesting, though, because I think having the confidence and the courage to sit down with clients and also being able to say to a client, look, I think you should hold back. That's maybe a little bit aggressive. That takes time. It takes tenure, right? You have to have wisdom. You have to have seen a few recessions. Do you know what I mean? But it also has to be in your wheelhouse. Talk a little bit about BA Union and what you've done there as a very senior investment practitioner.
Well, I handled a lot of the local pension assets, the MPF funds. Okay. I also worked with the insurance arm of the bank, manage the equities money as well as the fixed income portfolio, and also provide advice on asset allocation. So in a way, those 8 years was a bit of a transition from being a very specialist equities manager into a more multi-asset portfolio manager. And it's interesting in the sense that you get to see a wider picture. Although, as an Asian investor, I wake up every morning first thing to check out what happened to the U.S. market. So you're forced to be quite macro. You're forced to, because we are you can say a bit of a derivative of some of the more developed markets. But then you are actually sitting in a role that you get to allocate to different regions. And I actually expand my coverage. I mean, I look at bonds, I look at asset allocation on top of equities.
Yes.
So that was and increasingly, this is always my long time belief that as your wealth starting to grow in Asia, so you are starting more and more to tap into that area and try to help domestic investors to look at assets, not just in the region, but globally, and then also across many different asset classes.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about, we talked earlier about making sure that you're ready and prepared when you're meeting with a client, because the reality is when things change in the market, we're all reacting to it.
Yeah.
Right? But a lot of people have a view and they don't want to veer away from that view. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I put in the sports analogy again.
Yeah.
It's about you practice hard to get yourself prepared. It's like doing research in investment. A lot of investors believe in doing a lot of work and get the outlook right. And you can say you do the forecast, you do the prediction, and after a while, since you spend so much time on that view, it somewhat becomes self-fulfilling. You never want to change.
Yeah.
Because you stick to it, you believe that that's your... But actually, many times in my career, the value-added point is about whether you do the right thing when things change. And so when I prepare myself and when I prepare my investors, I always not just to give them a view, but also to say, this is where I'm coming from. Now, if these few things change, we're going to move, and here are the solutions. So by not panicking or by being well prepared, when things change, you make the decision. That's the ideal kind of structure. I remember when I was working with research teams, I would once sit down with a research specialist, a country specialist, and I said, so what will be the three things to get me to buy the stock? I know it's not a buy at the moment. So he said, I need these three things to happen. And 3 months later, all three things taped. I went back. The analyst was quite reluctant to move. I said, look, we had a plan. These three things happen, and we are going in. And it would turn out to be one of the most successful investments in my career. And so I said, sometimes if you don't prepare, you are not going to react in the right way. You get confused by all the noises in the market. It's not until you actually do your homework to get ready. And you get ready to change, not just saying that I just stick to the same view forever.
Yeah. I think you've got to stay relevant. You've got to adapt and roll with the punches, right?
Yeah. And I remember Mike Tyson once said that everybody got a plan until you get punched in the nose.
Yeah.
And
very true.
And so now the question is, you got punched in the nose, so what are you going to do? And which is actually the most important.
Yeah.
You can have a lot of plans, but very often the markets are so dynamic. You learn something new every day.
Yes.
You need to adapt.
Yeah. And you're humbled every day, right, in the markets, for sure. Let me ask you, when you look back at your career, what's the best quarter of your career? And by that, I don't mean necessarily the amount of money that you created or made for yourself, but in terms of what you enjoyed, how you have been challenged, you have been stretched. When you look back, when was that period and why?
Hard to say. I guess I got very excited at the very early part of my career because that was the time that I managed to go out and see a lot of companies.
Yeah.
And I felt we were very fortunate for me at that time being someone who just came out of college. And you have the most senior people in the different industries who are willing to sit down and tell you how they actually do business. And so I would say, in terms of inspiration, that was probably the best part. And of course, I continue on to do investment, but I took on many different roles. And I might not have the luxury of spending the whole day going out to see companies.
Yeah.
And so maybe in terms of intellectually to become very interesting, that's probably the research work that actually inspires me.
Yeah, it's so interesting. If when you look back at your career for our younger audience members, what would you say were some of the three key messages, that lessons that you can share about one's journey? Because I think when I speak to a lot of people, some people have a very assured path. I want to get to this position and this is how I'm going to get there. But the reality is for most of us, it doesn't always work out like that, right? Certainly at the beginning. And as we get older in our career, I think you have to adapt because things change. Companies are bought and sold. There's politics, there's nepotism. But what would be some of the key takeaways that you could impart?
I think one thing is to be open-minded. I remember when I was in my final year in university. So I said, I asked me what I wanted to do. So I said, well, not sure. I study accounting, so let's try to find a job in an accounting firm. But I can tell you what I don't want to do.
Yes.
There's anything to do with securities and stocks.
Okay. So you knew.
So 3 years later, I'll never say never. So and then I spent my entire career in securities. So number one, be open-minded. In fact, I remember someone told me the best business you want to be in is a business that doesn't exist at the moment.
Yeah.
So be open-minded. That's the first point. The number 2 point I touch on that is that you're willing to do what people don't want to do.
Yeah.
And number 3, I guess, is make sure do things well. Although it seems to be stating the obvious, but a lot of people tends to feel I want to reach a certain level or position. And they might overlook the fact that you don't have to look that far.
Yeah.
Do it well, the opportunity will come to you.
Yes.
And opportunities you probably never thought about. I never thought I would do Japan.
Yeah.
In the earlier part of my career. That was way beyond what I could do. But you get rewarded if you actually deliver.
When you're speaking with clients, what are the key biases that you see from them that you feel that you often have to address? The key ones that you feel are probably too strong.
To think that this time is different. I'm a big believer in cycles.
Yes.
Clients, they probably sometimes I think nowadays people get a lot of information. They got a lot of news. But many of this information is not quality information. It's just noises. And I think the biases would be they tend to think there's a new trend. There's always a new trend. But if you look at investment cycles, it come back and back again.
Yeah.
So I think the biases sometimes is a habit of feeling that, okay, I spot something really exciting and it's going to change the world. But actually you don't get that very often.
Yeah.
So what I try to engage with them is that, look, I learned my lesson. I share with them how I got it wrong. I think fund management, I was talking to another friend and he said, well, investors, they're very smart ones who can actually spot changes. But there are other group of people who are just simply seeing enough cycles that the reason why you got it right is that you have seen it before.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to talk to clients about, my experience of seeing different cycles. I was actually, just when I joined the industry, I was in the Asian financial crisis, and that's followed by TMT bubble and many other sort of a similar crisis along the way.
Yes.
So that probably is the best way to be frank.
Yeah.
Admit my mistakes before.
Yes.
And tell them you're not going to make the same mistakes this time.
Good. I love that. Now, talk a little bit about what you're doing now.
Yeah, I'm actually feeling that I just felt that I'm just like coming out from university. I want to learn more about things. So I have been doing, I guess, modern asset allocation goes beyond equities, bonds, and cash. You have alternatives. People talk about sustainability. There's new emerging asset class of cryptocurrencies.
Yes.
So I don't know. I mean, maybe a year later, cryptocurrency disappear. But I want to be prepared. What if the trend comes through? So I'm trying to, on one hand, I'm working on private equity deals. On the other hand, I try to enhance my knowledge on sustainability and cryptocurrency. I'm doing a masterclass. I'm actually asked to conduct a masterclass on sustainability investments, drawing upon my knowledge.
Fantastic.
And actually, to me, I felt exciting is that I'm learning something new in the process as well.
Yeah, that's great, because I think a lot of us have always found that there's a point in our career, maybe we plateau. But the older I get, the more I know, the more I realize I don't know. And I keep wanting to learn, and it's a good way to think and behave.
Yeah.
Quick few questions about your thought process, if I may. So, if I said to you, what were the non-negotiable behaviors that you identify with, and those closest to you, what would those be? Curious.
I'm more a quite forgiving person, frankly.
I know you.
So interesting enough, I have friends who are friends with no one.
Okay, interesting.
But my feeling is that in the work sort of environment, if anything that is non-negotiable is that you work with people who think that they are bigger than the team, bigger than the company. It's fine for them.
Yeah.
But that somehow something will happen. An accident is in the making.
Yeah.
And you have to be prepared for that.
Yeah, that's a really great point. It's so funny because you and I know each other. I think it's through Mark Dennis, right? Specifically.
Yes.
And Mark's worked with me for 9 years now, and I knew Mark through a mutual friend. And I just think that if you are a great operator, you've got high integrity and value, that's how you work. So like Mark and I, we always say there's no real ego. It's not who's right, it's what's right. And we discuss everything, we'll go through things. So I told him last night I was catching up with you, so he was excited for us. Along your journey, what do you think are the key things that have made you a truly successful investor, a manager, and client facing? What are the things that have given you that success?
Probably I always hold a very balanced view on things, and I always challenge myself. So I translate that into my communication with clients. And also I try to make very complex matters into more digestible ways to clients. And not to say that I say, okay, the clients don't understand, and so I give you something simple. But I think communicating with clients also allow me to learn from them.
Yeah.
So you have to open a conversation. You have simple messages. You share the view they have, so they will be in a position to respond, and we can go deeper. And in the process, I sort of go through my thought process again, rather than you give them very complicated matters and then there's no discussion whatsoever. I mean, you just tell them the view and the meeting is over. So I feel that sometimes I work well with clients is that they will come back to me, and I have clients that I handle equity mandates for them. But every time they got me out for a meeting or coffee, they always ask me about my view of the world on asset allocation.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, the trust that you build.
For sure.
And that's with a bit of humility, I would say. I guess to me, is that I never think I know everything. I can always leverage on the knowledge of the people around me, including the clients.
Another quick fire question. So I know you're a former sportsman, someone who's still very active. That and professionally, what is it that helps you really perform at your optimum in what has become such a competitive world?
I guess you have to understand yourself. You, as you say, is so competitive. Everything you have to be very focused, and you don't waste time on fighting the wrong battle.
Yeah.
You go into a match. Yes, I want to win every point, but there are times that you need to make compromises that focus on the big points, whether it's on the preparation, whether it's during the match.
Yeah.
And I draw a lot from that. And sometimes you planned it well. You want to be very focused on the effort, and you don't look at every single detail.
Yeah. Well, I think putting yourself in the right place. I mean, off camera before, I'll let you share the story, but we were talking about Gary Lineker, who's one of my favorite players growing up. Share with the audience what we were discussing.
Yeah, I once was asked to go to a university and talk to the students about planning their career and everything. So I showed them these video clips of Gary Lineker tapping in. It looks so easy. Yep. So in the right place at the right time, as people say. And then I had a little clip about Gary Lineker talking about that. And he said, I made so many different runs. It's probably like after the 20 runs, the ball finally came to the right place. And I was there. And people say, oh, you are in the right place at the right time. And he said, I'm there all the time.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at sportsmen, people don't realize how much hard work behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah.
Or how much hard work not captured by the camera.
Yeah.
You look at the football match, you only look at where the ball is.
Yeah.
But you rarely see what other players actually are doing. And I think this, I learned a lot. I mean, as a sportsman, you know You have to work hard every day.
Yeah.
You have a winning mentality, and it's not by luck that you achieve something. You really have to have that mentality.
It's interesting because when I was younger, when I was a sportsman, in particular when I boxed, I was ruthlessly aggressive in my mentality. It was, I wanted to absolutely destroy the other person. And as I got older now, working with my son, I don't directly coach him because I think he's his own man. But what I've seen very interesting, because boxing, for example, is a lonely sport. All sport, when you lose, you go back to your hotel room or whatever, you're on your own. But there have been guys that he has boxed with in different weight categories as well. But some of the guys have beaten him, he's beaten them. But they're compadres, and I will always send them a message, either a WhatsApp or on Instagram, if they won or if they've lost. I say, look, congrats, you're doing really well. I'm proud of you, because not everyone has that. And I always am reminded that it takes a great deal of courage to compete. It takes a great deal of courage to go out there and say, I'm gonna head this meeting. I'll underwrite the problem, leave it with me. And I think that's something that's always taken for granted, because if you win, they win. The team, the organization, more often than not. But if you lose, you lost. You screwed up the deal. And it's like, that's why I tease my wife. If I do 100 things and 99 are good, she might remember the one thing that wasn't good. If you could go back to any one period in your time, in your life, personally or professionally, to revisit it, what would it be?
Well, maybe to my school days when I was practicing table tennis. So I played with a social club, one or two very good coaches there.
Okay.
They introduced me to train with the national squad.
Amazing.
If I look back, I probably I was probably too loyal to that club. I think I want to achieve something to kind of to show that I achieved something. They are good coaches. I want to repay them for that. But that somewhat compromised my position in the training squad, in the national squad, somewhat. They always felt that I care more about the club, which is actually a social club. It's not a proper competitive club.
Yes.
And so a lot of the training method, it doesn't seem that I was totally in sync with so I spent 1 or 2 sessions a week with the club, and then the rest with the training squad, whereas many of the players, they do every day with the training squad. So they are more tuned in with the team. So had I done differently, maybe I still want to repay the good coaches, but I probably want to be more committed to that training, and probably physically. I rely a lot on my touch on the ball, but I didn't spend enough time of training myself physically.
Okay, the physicality of
the physicality, that's my weak part.
Yeah.
So if I don't want to do it differently, I probably had to work harder on doing physical training, and also on flexibility as well.
I mean, that one's huge. One of my idols is Michael Johnson, the former gold medalist and world record holder for the 200 and 400 meters, until Usain Bolt took his 200 title away. But early on in his career, he was doing phenomenally well, but he had a lot of injuries. And his coach said to him, you know what you're not doing, right? You've got to look at what you're not doing to really understand how you can avoid these injuries. And he didn't tell him. He let Michael go away and have a think. And Michael basically shared this story that he realized the one thing he wasn't doing was spending enough time in the weight room. And he didn't enjoy that part of it. But it's inextricably linked. And so when people talk to me about what's your diet, it's not just what you're eating and drinking. It's like what you're mentally consuming when you're going to bed as an athlete, and also as a professional. As you approach your 40s and 50s, in many ways, I still have that energy and that drive. But I know that physically, I've had to recalibrate how I operate in order to match that, right? So I've realized that how to get the best out of yourself and your performance as you get older, it changes as well.
Yeah, I would say taking good care of yourself is a responsibility. It's a responsibility to your own life. It's also a responsibility to whoever hire you to work.
It's well, young Isaac's there behind the camera, and a while ago last year, I said, look, I was trying to get him to become more fit and healthy, and he ran 8:55. Was it Isaac in the 2.4K? So in Singapore, in the national service in Army, 2.4K is the running time or the distance, and he ran 8:55, which is a very solid time. So I bet him $1,000 that if he couldn't do that in this time frame. And my goal really wasn't about the money. My goal was get him back on that fitness track because that would give him something. Do you know what I mean? So I'm always encouraging people. I won't tell you if he did it or not. I'll let Isaac tell you that. But what would you say your biggest strengths are and weaknesses as a professional?
I think my biggest strength is that I have a broad set of skills. So I do investment. I can engage with clients. And if needed, I can also run a team. So that would be a more general set of skills that can actually allow me to always step in whenever there is a problem. I need to sort of fill the gaps or provide a solution. Weakness. I'm not sure. I probably had too many weaknesses, but I would say I don't know. I mean, the weakness is that maybe I try to help too much. That sometimes I need to sit down to be realistic about what I can possibly achieve.
Well, actually, this is one of the funny things when I coach people, and I have to say, for a lot of women in particular, a whole session is dedicated towards learning how to say no. Because the thing is a very dear friend of mine and a very, very senior client reached out to me in the last couple of days saying, would I meet this gentleman who's coming to Singapore? He's going to meet a number of search firms. And I said, look, if he's already meeting a number of search firms or has already done so, there's going to be candidate duplication. Is he realistically the type of person that will pay me to do career coaching? And so in the end, I'll have a half an hour call, an hour meeting with him. And at the end of which, all he's going to want to know is, can I put him in front of people, my Rolodex, which I will not just utilize? And so I said, so I'm very reluctant to meet with him. However, if he's a dear friend of yours, then okay. So that gentleman, my friend, my client said, okay, in that case, maybe it doesn't make sense. And I don't want to be rude because that person I value so much. But the problem then is that if I meet that guy, he'll think Paul did F all for me. And then he won't like me. And the irony is I've just given him an hour and a half of my time for free. So learning to say no is very, very, very powerful, but in the right way. And you know what I love about Hong Kong? There's so many things. I'm in love with Hong Kong. So in Singapore, it's changing now a little bit, but it can take you, 7 conversations and finally find out it's a no. Because people don't want to be rude. In Hong Kong, people have got no problem telling you it's a no. No, you can leave the office now. No, move on. And they're not being rude. And I love that because it's real. It's visceral.
Yeah.
So that's one of the cultural differences I like. Now, are there any big projects or exciting things that you're working on now personally and professionally? Because I know, you've taken your son to Australia. Your daughter's about to go to university. Just, in your business life, what's happening?
Well, I think I need some time to make myself physically in a better shape.
You're still in pretty good shape.
This summer has been doing so many things with the children and running around for some work-related stuff. And probably it's a bit of time. I continue to try to learn more of the new knowledge that I just touched on. But probably it's a time to just go back into a better routine.
Project Henry.
Project Henry, yeah, more in sports.
Yeah.
I love racket sports.
Okay.
And I haven't been practicing much. And so I think it's about time.
Good man.
To go back and, you live and learn. And
course you do.
then always I feel you want always to set some objectives just to keep yourself going.
Yeah, you got to do it. You know, it's interesting because my son is 17 now. He dwarfs me. He's over 6 foot tall. I'm 5'6.5" on a good day. And we did a little bit of sparring the other day, and he whooped me. And I'm still a lot physically stronger than him. But it was like, because I think I'm relatively fit, but I realized there's fit and then there's fighting fit. There's fit in your mind, like you're 14 or you're 21 or you're 25 and you're actually 46 and you realize, it's a big contrast. So I think as I get older, like I told you earlier, my eyesight's going and I don't know why, but I'm shocked. It's like I've had perfect vision. How come this is happening so quickly? It's like, to me, it was alien. It's foreign to me. Now, is there anything that you can share with us that will not get you into trouble, that nobody knows about you? Anything that would be unusual that people in your professional circle may not know about Henry?
Yeah, so much different things I wanted to do, and so maybe I was in theater during my school days.
Tell us, what did you do in theater?
So I actually produced a musical.
Wow.
And it was actually held in a proper theater in Hong Kong.
How old were you?
About 18 at the time, just a year before I went to university.
What was the musical called?
Well, we did The King and I.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. So, we are not smart enough to write our own.
You know, I should be playing that part, except for the fact I can't sing a lick. You know, Yul Brenner was the original King and I. Yeah.
Actually, we ended up putting together someone who is completely different character.
Really?
Because I said,
you can't replicate.
Look, we can't replicate.
Yeah, he was a unicorn.
So of course it's a student production.
Yeah.
And it just happened, a good friend of mine in school, that he was the best actor in school, and then he ran the music department.
Wow.
And so he is the best candidate.
Did you shave his hair off?
No.
You should have done. You should have made him shave his hair off and then later say, actually, we're not going to go that route.
Make sure you grow it back. and so I always have an interest in, I'm not that an artistic person, but I always like the stage management thing. So about 10 years ago, and when she's listening, she'll be really annoyed. I mean, she wanted to get me into flamenco.
Okay.
And I was running out of excuses. So I said, you know what? You are learning that in this Hong Kong Academy for Performing Arts. Yeah. I just figured out there's a stage management course running in parallel in the room next door.
Amazing.
So I said, okay, I'm going for that.
Amazing. So who ran that course, sorry?
That course is this Hong Kong this academy.
Okay.
It's a kind of like a part-time course.
Brilliant.
So I went in, enjoyed that, and I learned sound management as well.
Yeah.
And maybe in 10, 20 years, maybe I made another career in theater.
Why not?
So actually, I don't talk too much about it. I mean, you go into work, I talk about sports. But maybe I don't want to go in and work and then I say all sort of different things apart from what I do at work. So
well, but you know, I tell you, it's funny because years ago, I had been working as a toilet cleaner. I got a job in recruitment, but I needed actually something that would pay me more. And I realized that the best paying money when you're 18 during summer was working on a building site. And my dad was in building and I didn't want to work for him because it wouldn't go well. And there was an advert that I saw and I met this guy at his house and my dad drove me to the house because he said, who puts up a job advert for a laborer? It's very unusual. So I met this guy and he said, can you send me your CV? And I really didn't have a lot on my CV, but on it said theatre productions. So he started laughing. He goes, tell me about this theatre thing. And this guy is a big, strong guy. And I thought, oh no, he's going to rip into me. And he goes, because I love musicals. Yeah. And as we walked through the door, he showed me like his this is for Ken Kinghorn, still one of my dearest friends. He was much older than me, but he had pictures of all of the musicals that he would do on a yearly basis. And let me tell you, he was tough as nails. But as you know, in the business world, when people think of theatre, you know, or even in the sporting world, the two don't connect. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so stage production, fantastic. So do you remember any of the lyrics from the King and I?
Well, quite a few.
It's a brilliant. So Isaac, by the way, loves musicals, and I saw. Do you know the actor Jason Scott Lee who played Bruce Lee in the movie? He played in The King and I in London, and I met with him, and the lady acting opposite him was Elaine Page, and I was blown away. But are you a fan of Yul Brynner, by the way?
Oh, because I was watching The King and I since a young age, and
he's amazing. He just captivated people, and some of the movies that he was in, I was transfixed because I'm a movie buff. So so next time, right? And one of the podcasts I'm going to release soon, you'll find it really interesting. It's with a guy called Kamil Huq, who created the first acting school in Singapore, and he runs several different academies, and he's actually going into kind of corporate coaching to train people. This is going back to your earlier point, when you're going into a meeting or going up on stage, he teaches the moments before, and unequivocally there are so many parallels that can be pulled from acting and the process of preparation. The same with being a sports person, and I think they're all inextricably linked. Henry, what questions do you have for me, if any, or things that you want to touch upon, man?
Well, so what is your next target in sports? I mean, you want to go back into boxing?
Oh, I would. I'm realistic, man. I'm realistic. I'm 46, and there's a lot of things. I've had a lot of injuries. It was funny during COVID. I came across this. It's a good question, really good question. I came across this thing that measures how much, based on your age and your weight, can you lift or do push-ups or press-ups or deadlifts or whatever. And I looked at that, and my goal, I told one of my clients who's a CEO, I told him about it, shared it with him, go, what's your goal? And I said, my goal is to be in the top 1% in the world in most of those lifts. And he started laughing. And I said, yeah, I can do it. There are only some that I might have to avoid. Actually, I did it. In 8 of the 10 lifts, I was in the top 1% of the world, which I was very proud of. It was just for me to know. But really, it's just to help my kids now. So what I say to people, there aren't lazy children, there are lazy parents. So even like when my daughter is in basketball, because I don't really play basketball, I'm rubbish at it. So I can't really help her other than feed her the ball and do things like that. Obviously with boxing with my son, we've talked about, how I try to guide him. So I invite him to do the pads with me in the evening. But my goal is when I'm 50, I'm going to get into some ridiculous shape, and I will post a picture on Instagram.
Very well.
It's going to be good. Henry, look, it's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege, and we're short on time. But when I'm in Hong Kong next, let's promise to have a drink together.
Sure.
Henry, it's been a pleasure.
To it.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah.